Across Britain, thousands of historic buildings have been neglected. Their owners struggling to restore them because of planning restrictions, design problems or lack of money. Luckily, some romantics do take on the challenge of converting and restoring these forgotten gems. But it isn't for the faint-hearted.
You've got to be slightly crazy.
I think it can push you to the limit, actually.
We have to find a way of going this done, because if we don't, then we lose everything.
They're often churches, mills and barns.
But also factories, warehouses and industrial buildings that are often abandoned because they're so difficult for residential conversion. These buildings have as much rich history and tell as many fascinating stories about our past as any stately home or medieval castle.
These are palaces of industry, and so it's such a privilege to live in one.
As an architect, I relish the challenge that these unusual buildings give us when we're trying to create a place called home.
This time, a young couple embark on their first ever restoration.
Have you ever done a restoration project before?
Lego.
Lego!
And when their money runs out, their dream can be shattered.
There's just no way we could ever do it again.
The rustic village of Wellington sits in the heart of Herefordshire's farming community. In the centre of the village is Stocks House Farm, which is home to two 17th and 18th century barns. Marco and Kath Walker have run their own tour operating business close by for 11 years, but have never lived in the village. That was until they made the farmer who owned Stocks Farm an offer he couldn't refuse.
Dick the farmer had put the two barns up for separate dwellings and asked us if we wanted to buy one. So we thought about it and thought, well, maybe we could possibly ask him the price for both of them to do up as one dwelling.
They offered the farmer their life savings, which was £150,000. He accepted, and they became the proud owners of two barns that were about to fall down and in desperate need of restoration.
We've never restored a building before. We've done up a two-bedroom flat. When I say done up, we painted it.
We're real amateurs, we don't really know what we're doing, but it's a challenge, it's a huge challenge, yeah.
To pay for the project, they've managed to secure a £300,000 self-build mortgage, which will be released in 3 separate stages. They hope to transform the barns into a family home for them and their 2 young children, Romy and Maggie.
There's going to be so much blood, sweat and tears going into it that you want to make sure you spend quite a few years in it, really.
Hopefully we'll want to live here for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
For 2 very inexperienced novices, it will be a huge challenge to save the building and convert it into a family home while maintaining the character and integrity of the original structure.
Morning. You're missing Marco and Kath. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Are you well? Look at you nestled in there. How are you?
Nice
Hi, Kath. Nice to meet you. How are you? You well?
I'm good.
Nice to see you. How are you, Marco? How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Come on, let's have a look at this.
Good.
This is unbelievable.
I know.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Absolutely mind-bogglingly knackered.
Perfect.
You seem to have more gaps and fresh air than you have timber and building.
I know, I don't
Is
think
that
we can
fair?
move in tomorrow.
No. Is it listed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
Grade 2.
God, that's grade 2 listed.
Yeah.
And it's fallen into that level of disrepair.
But I think that's why we're allowed to take it down, basically.
You
well-
mean completely?
Yes. Only this barn here.
And they've
yeah.
asked us to keep as much of the original oak as possible, though.
So we are going to do that, but you'll find that quite a lot of the oak you can't use anyway, because it's just shot to bits.
The barns are in a terrible state of disrepair. I'm surprised they're still standing.
Have you ever done a restoration project before?
No, not at all.
Have you done a building project before?
Lego.
Lego!
Yeah.
We're just out of our minds, you know.
We are out of our depth, for sure. It's something that we're kind of scared about.
We're hoping that at the end of it we'll think it was worth it.
Yeah.
Both barns form part of Stocks House Farm, and over the years have been used for keeping cattle and for drying grain. The 17th century cattle barn is an oak-framed structure. and the later 18th century barn is made from brick. They have a combined space of 3,000 square feet.
It's pretty well propped up, isn't it, by kind of anything.
This is our kitchen, actually.
This is your kitchen?
Yeah.
You've got a little bit of acro prop here, propping it up. I mean, this is amazing. Look,
We're
I mean,
hoping this
you
doesn't
have actually
go.
you've got the Lego blocks out. It's a matrix of stuff to just keep it together. But you're taking it down and you're reusing as much as you possibly can.
Absolutely, yeah.
But, I mean, let's be honest, looking at how much can actually be reused from this.
Minimal.
You know, look, I mean, that's timber. That is a couple of 100 years old, nearly.
Really.
The amount of new build needed in this is way more than what you're going to preserve of the old, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh
Really?
yeah, absolutely. We know that it is minimal what we can keep.
The oak barn was used for cattle and for storing grain, and originally had a thatched roof. The brick barn alongside with a tiled roof was added later and is known as a combination barn. Here grain was stored separately above the cattle and was dried from the warmth of the animals below. The brick barn is in slightly better condition, but together both barns present a massive challenge to Marco and Kath.
Look at that! This is way better than the other side.
Yeah.
Loads better. I feel much better about it now. You've got all of these fantastic timbers. This is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
really...
this is lovely.
This bit is actually the best bit of both barns, really. It's well preserved, it's dry, so it just needs a lick of paint, really.
In fairness, the one next door, because it's now going to be predominantly new build, you're kind of starting from scratch, which is a lot easier. As soon as you're dealing with all the existing window positions where they're being listed, you've got so many more constraints with the design, then it's actually harder to crack that.
I think you're right.
New build is much easier than restoration.
Sure.
This project is a tale of two halves, with the oak barn needing a total rebuild and the brick barn having to undergo a slow restoration process. I'm keen to see how Mog and Kath plan to combine the two.
So, ground floor plan,
Yeah.
just talk me through it.
The barns are Grade 2 listed, so the designs and all building materials will need to be approved by both the local planners and conservation officers. Downstairs in the brick barn, there'll be a hallway, games room and a guest bedroom with ensuite bathroom. The oak barn contains an open-plan kitchen, living area and utility room. Upstairs, they've designed 4 bedrooms with 3 ensuite bathrooms. There's also a large gallery landing and a study.
At the minute, all of that end of the building is plugged with kitchen, utility room, toilet. You've got to think about where the sun is.
Yeah.
Right? So the middle of the day, you've got all the sunlight here, but the only room benefiting from that is your utility room in the back of your kitchen. Your toilet, your one sole ground floor loo, is opening right onto your living space. I can see it.
Yeah.
That's going to put me right off my dinner.
Yeah.
You do not want your toilet next to your dining room.
I want them to locate their main living spaces where there's the most natural light.
You flip the utility space in the toilet, which is in the wrong spot, and you put it in the most boring part of the house. over
Absolutely.
there. Yeah?
Yeah.
I've also got another idea as to how they can create more space.
2 staircases. Doesn't make any sense. I think you should have big hallway, big staircase. Lose the other staircase
Yeah,
completely because
yeah.
you don't need it. It's a waste of space. And then you've done it.
Just email me it.
This is a beautiful old structure that requires and deserves some very delicate care and attention. But it's also a major project that even a seasoned restorer would hesitate to embark on.
So what, it never fails to amaze me, the scale and the ambition of restoration projects that people take on. Marco and Kath bought something that is virtually a wreck. It's in danger of collapse at any point, being propped up by acro props, concrete blocks, sheets of plywood, anything that could be found to keep this building in its state. But what worries me more, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, is they genuinely haven't got a clue what they're doing.
Marco and Kath Walker have never restored a building before and are about to begin the conversion of 2 17th and 18th century Grade 2 listed barns. They bought them for £150,000 and have borrowed £300,000 to carry out the work. That money will be released at 3 specific stages of the build. But before they can do anything, the oak barn will need to be carefully taken down to find out which timbers can be reused.
Today is definitely the biggest day so far. This has been up for 300 years and it's not going to be here anymore.
Most historic buildings would normally be repaired on site, but because this barn is in such a bad state, the conservation officer has agreed to allow the wood to be taken away to be inspected. It's a difficult, dangerous and unusual procedure.
Oh. Just thought then the whole thing was going to come down like a pack of cards.
With the oak barn now dismantled, winter takes hold on site. Luckily for Marco, the restoration of the oak frame is being done undercover.
I love these places.
Yeah.
I've come to Border Oak, a local timber framing company, to see how work is progressing.
When you see a natural material like this being worked in this way, it's just beautiful, you know?
The craftsmen are integrating as much of the old wood as possible into a new frame, in order to comply with the Conservation Officer's guidelines.
So this is where the old has been adapted into the new.
Oh my gosh.
You really are maximising the beauty of the historical parts of the building. No, you've got the old marks there. This is what the joiner would have marked on there to recognise each individual piece. So I can even pluck that away. But still,
Don't do it too much.
but still, at the heart of that piece of timber, it's incredibly strong.
And I didn't even think it would look like this. I can't imagine. I didn't know how much they were going to use, and they've actually used more than we first thought they would.
All that stuff we've looked at before is really nice mortars and tenon joints. But when it comes to mixing old and new, look at this joint. Wow, this is a scarf joint where they've taken an old bit of timber, cut it into a very strong shape actually, where it can just slot in and perfectly blend with a new piece of timber.
God, that's incredible, isn't it?
I mean, it's not easy, and it
No.
takes a fantastic craftsman to do it, because you've got to get the shape and the cut absolutely right. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Stunning, stunning, seamless, beautiful way of mixing old and new.
This is craftsmanship at its best, just what the building deserves.
Is this it? Is this your new frame?
Oh,
Look
wow.
at that. It's amazing, isn't it?
That is huge. That's really nice.
That's your future housemate. It's
I
like,
know.
you know, and to build a building out of this stuff is brilliant, because it can all be done in the workshop, all in controlled conditions, beautifully made, brought to site, lifted up in place, get the roof on, bosh.
Job done.
Lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Look at
really,
that
really
timber.
nice.
This A-frame of new oak will form part of their south wall on the barn. The entire frame for the new build is a massive part of the project's £300,000 budget.
As beautiful as this is, it doesn't come cheap, does it?
No, well, the frame itself is 70 grand.
70 grand.
Yeah. We wanted it to look amazing, you know, and you've got to get good oak, haven't you, really?
The oak frame is a substantial cost, but at least it's a clearly defined one.
I'm just a massive fan of timber frame buildings. I think if I had my way, every single house in Britain would be built out of this stuff. It's stunningly beautiful, highly crafted. To see the skill and the love and passion that goes into creating these frames, it's great stuff.
Back in Wellington, the snow has gone and the foundations are being laid for the oak barn. I'm meeting Tim Block, a structural engineer who has substantial experience of restoring locally listed buildings.
From an engineering point of view, honestly, are people mad turning these into homes? Be honest, come on.
As long as they are prepared to accept that there will be problems that they do not see when they start, fine.
Yeah.
You don't know until you start really looking in detail and actually exposing it all.
The walls of the brick barn are in a terrible condition and in danger of falling down. To maintain its character, Tim's plan is to keep as much of the old building as possible.
What have you got to do with this building to stop it from collapsing?
Imagine that's the floor. It's very flexible that way and flexible that way, but it's very stiff
That way?
that way. You can't make that
Yeah, it doesn't
bend.
move very
It doesn't move at all, does it?
Yeah. If you've got four walls either side of there, and
Yeah.
it's strengthened because that's not going to move.
You got it?
Yep.
Nothing's going to go anywhere.
As Tim has pointed out, the biggest financial worry for Margot and Kath is what they can't see.
The roof will all have to come off. And when they take the roof off, that is when we may find decay in the timbers that just can't predict from down here. It's got to be managed carefully.
While Tim gets to grips with making the building structurally sound, I'm keen to find out more about the history of our barns. The local land records show that the barns were once part of Drake's Farm in Wellington, an area now renowned for breeding the Hereford cow. So I've come to the nearby Hereford cattle market to meet agricultural historian Nicola Verdon to see if we can identify when and why the barns were first built.
So Nicola, I've been digging around trying to do some research, and on the land tax records for the parish of Wellington, it says here in 1781, the land was named Drake's Farm. But then if you jump ahead just to 2 years later, to the tax records of 1783, it's actually renamed the Stocks House.
Well, that would signify to us the transformation that's taking place on the farm. So it's probably changing from concentration on arable to concentration on stock.
And it must have been a real success for the farm, actually. Physically, there must have been a transformation with the buildings, because when we jump ahead to 1855, these are the sales particulars for the Stocks House Farm. And it lists everything in it. It says a farmyard with barn, cattle sheds, wagon, cart shed, stable and gig house, and the feeding yard with large barn, cow shed and cattle shed. That is the exact area where our barn stands.
Yes, this is a farm that's kind of changed its nature of production to be much more centrally about livestock, and the nature of the buildings and what they were actually used for is clearly changing over the course of the late 18th century.
During the Industrial Revolution, there was great change in the nation's eating habits. On average, the population was becoming wealthier, and with better living standards, there was new demand for nutritious meat. It was boom time for the Herefordshire farmers.
The Hereford is a cow that's literally been exported worldwide. Today there's about 5 million of them, and we can have a look here. This is a herd book from the mid-19th century, which was an attempt, really one of the first attempts to trace the lineage of certain breeds. And this fine fella here is Wellington, the bull.
He's a big
beast, isn't he? Yeah. And if we turn to the description of him, you see here, Wellington, calved in 1808, bred by Mr. B. Tompkins, purchased in 1816 for the sum of £283 10 shillings. It's about £10,000 in today's money.
That is incredible. And so Mr. B. Tompkins sounds like he was quite an entrepreneurial breeder at the time.
Absolutely. He's actually the forefather of the Hereford breed. And interestingly for us, Mr. Tompkins is breeding his Hereford cattle on the same estate as our farm.
You're kidding me.
With farmers like Tompkins making big money from cattle, this cash was being reinvested into much-needed farm buildings. The fact that our barns still stand today is testament to the quality of the building and their importance to the area. It's been 3 months since the old timber barn was taken down, and Margot and Kat's brave investment in the new frame has paid off as the carpenters assemble the main structure.
Yeah, that's the old gate pin made by a blacksmith, look, folded over on the forge, look. That's his original place.
The A-frame is a very simple kit of parts that is erected on site very quickly. This barn has been brought back to life, piece by piece.
Finally starting to look like a house. So we've got all that glass there, all the sunlight coming in through there into our bedroom. That's going to be absolutely peachy, that is.
It's a matrix of joists, beams and posts. But once the frame is finally in place, Marco and Kath are concerned that the internal structural design isn't what they imagined.
Originally, when we first had the plans done, the post wasn't in, but then the company that provided our frame said it has to be in to support this big beam here. So consequently, that means that our kitchen is reduced in size. So, and actually here, right in front of the post, is going to be a peninsula, so it's quite an important part of the kitchen. You know, this room is probably the most important room in the house. It's frustrating.
Marco and Kath had always thought their design would be an uncluttered open plan space, so having supporting posts in the middle of it is a real problem. Because restoration is such a new experience for Marco and Kath, I've brought them to an 18th century barn in Oxfordshire. I want to show them how successful a restoration project can be if you're on top of the design decisions throughout every stage of the project.
Feast your eyes on this. Look at that. What a space, eh?
What I love about this particular barn conversion is that it combines modern design and technology with tradition, which means the building hasn't lost its integrity.
To make this even more open plan if they wanted to, watch this. It moves.
That's incredible.
How mad is that? It's brilliant, isn't it?
That's amazing.
This design isn't only about the big grand features, but it's also clever on the small details.
Dining table like this, you think, relatively traditional, and then here at the end, you pull down a drawer, or what looks like a drawer, and there's a socket in there.
That is awesome.
So if someone wants to sit there with their laptop, and the battery starts running down, they don't have to lift it up and carry it somewhere else to plug it in. When you do open plan, you've got to be really clever about where all the socket points are.
This visit was also a chance for me to help Marco and Kath resolve their problem with the structural posts impeding the open plan design of their kitchen.
If that's your peninsula unit there, and the post was, say, there, so 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 metres away, then you've got enough room to be able to walk through it comfortably, and you've got enough room, like the guys have got here, to have breakfast bar with the column behind you. Your column is like there. It's really annoying. It's right in the way. Where if it's moved to here, within the kitchen, it doesn't become an obstruction anymore. You in effect move the entire kitchen over so that the post is absorbed within the peninsula unit.
I definitely agree with that.
As first-time restorers, Marco and Kath need as much inspiration as they can get, as every mistake can prove costly.
It's actually woken us up a bit, because we're plodding along while the structure's going up. We're not actually thinking about the detail of it all, you know, where the light switches are going, where the plugs are going, and, you know, this is really helping a huge amount.
It's been so worthwhile bringing Kath and Marco here, because what they've realised is to make a project look beautiful and elegant and simple is to get the detail absolutely right. But what I'm worried about is these are things that they should have thought about quite some time ago and under huge pressure to get it absolutely right.
Marco and Kath Walker are restoring 2 dilapidated barns in Herefordshire. Their budget of £300,000 is split into 3 stages by the mortgage company. The first payment will be released when the floors and walls are up, the second when the building is wind and watertight, and the final payment on completion. It's spring and the perfect weather for roofing. The old tiles have been removed from the brick barn to find out what damage lies beneath. Meanwhile, the new oak frame is being given a new roof, using as many of the original tiles as possible. I've come back to site to find out how Marco and Kath feel the project is progressing.
What a beautiful day,
I know, isn't it?
Completely different to every other day I've been here, where I've been battered by the wind and the rain. Come on, let's have a look at the building. How's it going? Is it good? You've got the insulation in, which is great.
Keeping us nice and toasty.
The roof's looking beautiful, and I love that kind of mix of the old and the new. It's really lovely. Honestly, the way you're doing it is perfect. This looks amazing, doesn't it? Look at that. It's just brilliant that you've got the frame up so quickly.
The oak barn that is being completely rebuilt will house their kitchen and open-plan living space. But they've had some problems integrating the supporting posts into their design.
The dreaded timber post.
Yeah.
What have you done with it? Is it being absorbed and designed into the kitchen, or is it separate away from the kitchen unit?
We did what you suggested. We put it in the peninsula, almost centrally in the kitchen unit.
We like it now. Well, I do.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Because Marco and Kath have a self-build mortgage, their bank will only release money when specific stages of the build are complete and signed off. Now that the walls and floors are up, they've received their first payment of £80,000.
Where are you at in terms of the money?
Well, we're a third of the way through, I would say. because the frame costs a huge amount. It was about 300. We've increased it a little bit because we wanted to have a nice kitchen and some nice bathroom stuff.
So you spent about 100 grand,
Yeah.
just over 100 grand to get you to this stage.
That's it.
Just don't get caught out in that bit where, you know, the bill's at a certain stage, but you still haven't paid those bills yet.
Yeah.
You get lulled into a false sense of security because the money's always
Sure.
a couple of steps behind where the bill's actually at, so don't get caught out at the end, just keep an eye on it.
I can't actually wait until I don't have big bills landing on my doorstep.
Yeah, that'll happen for the rest of your life.
I know.
Although work is moving quickly with the oak barn, I was always concerned that their biggest challenge would be restoring the brick barn. I'm keen to find out from Tim Block, the structural engineer, what condition the barn is actually in now that the tiles have been removed.
From an engineering point of view, this roof is just, well, it's critical, isn't it?
You've not just got the dead weight of the tiles, you've also got the snow loads, the wind loads, and being a valley like this, you get a greater snow load in the valley than you do on a plain roof. Some are rotten and damaged, and that damage you can see there is all where the roof has failed at some stage. Just gradual drip, 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 drip over the decades, even perhaps 20, 30 years.
Marco and Kath will have to spend more money on steel strengthening rods and new timber supports. It's going to cause further delays, and the mortgage company won't release the second stage payment until the roof is finished and both barns are wind and watertight.
If we weren't to be doing this, this building would lose its roof, it would lose its weatherproofing, and within 10 years it would collapse. These buildings have been here serving us, or serving the farming community here for however many hundreds of years. It's keeping it going that keeps the character of the village alive.
To understand how important these barns are to the local area, I want to find out more about their recent history. So I'm meeting farmer Dick Megan, who sold the barns to Marco and Kath. He owns Stocks House Farm and still breeds Hereford cattle today, a tradition that has continued for nearly 200 years.
So your family bought this in 1902?
Yeah, my great-uncle, E.W. Langford.
E.W. Langford?
Yeah.
Sounds like a very proud man. It's a good name, that.
He's a very proud man. He was mayor of Hereford twice.
Was he really? It says at 3 o'clock, punctually. I wonder if your great-uncle actually went along. He must have gone along to it.
He wouldn't have anybody else looking after his money.
Dick's great-uncle bought Stocks House Farm for £3,100 and used the barns for cattle and later to store grain. When Dick took over in 1958, combine harvesters began depositing grain straight from the field into silos. Agricultural buildings were being built using more modern materials, so by the 1990s the old barns were totally outdated.
To survive in farming now, you've got to have some diversification, definitely. My father always used to say, you don't only farm the land, you farm the money as well.
It's not a bad saying.
Dick is proud of the farm's heritage and has the last surviving photographs of what the barns looked like over the last 100 years.
This is the village in 1908. Children going to school. This is your actual building, that we're cowshed and barn that you're looking at.
Oh my God, that is it.
Marco's bought.
That is it.
That is it.
So there's the driveway.
That's right.
What, needs to be steps going up to the first floor?
Steps up to what would be a granary before. Quite an amazing building, isn't it?
Really amazing building. And now it's going to be turned into the most fantastic family home.
Indeed. When they move in, I'm quite looking forward to the day. It'll be fantastic.
For the moment, that day will have to wait, as back on site the brick barn has become much more labour intensive. Continual strengthening of the roof with steel plates is now draining Marco's budget, and in order for the mortgage company to release the second payment of £73,000, they desperately need both barns to be wind and watertight.
It's been quite tough really with the roof. It's cost more than we anticipated, for sure, which is a bit of a nightmare.
10 months into the restoration, I've come back to see just how close Marco and Kath are to completing the second stage of the build.
You look far too well, you look far too positive. You're supposed to be like knackered by this stage.
Oh, I'm knackered.
And complaining and whinging.
Well,
But this all looks fantastic. It's going on really well. So you got the roof on, tiles on.
The roof on the brick barn is beginning to take shape, and the walls on the oak barn have been finished with a traditional saffron lime render in keeping with the surrounding buildings.
That looks fantastic. And I know the glass is not in there, but you really get a feeling of what this thing's going to look like at the end.
Upstairs in the brick barn, the roof timbers have all been strengthened, and the layout is beginning to take shape.
Oh, look how light it is in here. So that's where the glass is going to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Incredible, eh?
It is huge. Imagine this has been your bedroom if you were a kid. I mean, the timber frame just looks amazing. It's absolutely bursting with character.
Now that the timber frame structure is finished, it needs to be protected, and over the next 2 months they'll concentrate on finishing the roof. But they'll also need to ensure that the new glazing, including a substantial roof light adjoining the 2 barns, is installed to qualify for the next mortgage payment.
We're going to try and get it as watertight as possible, because the next stage is to build the snug. But we can't build the snug until the scaffolding's down. But we can't take the scaffolding down until we've done the roof. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. This time now, I thought I'd be inside painting. But that just shows you my naivety of it all, doesn't it, really? That shows how naive I am.
These delays mean Kath will have to put back her plans for the fixtures and fittings. Without this vital next stage payment, everything comes to a standstill.
All of a sudden, things aren't where they should be, the process isn't where it should be, and that becomes quite worrying. Once it's watertight, the major fixtures and stuff can start happening, you see, and it can't happen until then. I knew it was never going to be easy, and I knew that it would be tough financially. But it's just a constant sort of learning curves that you go through with it, really. Not always feeling like you've got total control of what you're doing, and having to deal with each other's stresses as well, you know.
With cash tighter than ever, restoration novice Marco has resorted to working on site himself. This is the lowest point of the project. The building is far from being watertight, and there are now no skilled builders on site. I'm concerned that Marco and Kath are in danger of being overwhelmed by this project.
You're not doing building work, are you? Please don't tell me you're doing building work.
Well, I've actually learned a skill.
Why are you doing this?
I've learned a skill. Well, because A, I want to be a part of the build and help as much as I can, but also it's probably this is the safest and easiest job to do. So.
But how are things going generally with it?
We've had a little bit of a grinding halt.
I was expecting to see all the glass in and it all protected and looking great.
Yeah, well, it's been a bit of a rocky road with that, really. We had a bit of a problem with the patent glazing.
On any project, the glass is really important because you want to be wind and watertight, but it's even more important on yours, isn't it? Because of the bank.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Are you in a position now where you can't pay all your bills?
Yeah, I would say so. I've been absolutely honest and clear with all the builders, telling them that, you know, we're on stage payments here, and as soon as the next stage comes, we can pay you the remainder. And everyone's been happy and fine with it.
Because the bank will only release the next stage of your funding when it's wind and watertight.
Yeah. We've got 2 more stages left, which is the wind and watertight and then the finished
But this
article.
one is a long time coming, this one.
Yeah.
It's taken forever.
They've hit the classic self-build stalemate. They can't finish the stage without money, and they can't get any money until the stage of work is finished.
How's money going kind of generally in terms of the budget?
I would say at the end we're probably going to be about 3 to 5% over. We're not going to do every single ensuite.
But there is still a lot to do. I mean, there's loads to do.
Yeah.
You know, all the plasterboarding, staircase to go in, kitchen to go in, loads of joinery work, skirting boards.
I think you feel quite positive about it, but I don't, because I just don't see how.
Well, I'm just determined to do it. I mean, I'll do whatever I need to do. I'll paint as much as all day and all night. You know,
yeah, and we'll both do that.
You know, and as long as you've got that kind of mindset, you can try your best. And if you fail, so what? At least you've tried.
Yeah.
Having taken on such an ambitious build, and now desperately short of cash, Marco and Kath are having to make compromises.
This is Romy's room.
You're going to plasterboard it, paint it, decorate it, get the electrics working, have it as a working room, but just not finish that on suite.
Yeah. It's like a little
But then you've got to think about the floor as well, because it eventually will be a bathroom.
What's the floor going to be?
Well, I would like timber. I think Marco wants carpet.
In our room.
How do we overcome that major decision in life?
Coin.
A coin.
We're not having carpet.
No, just in...
It'll be carpet or timber.
Well, carpet's going to be cheaper and quicker.
Yeah.
Add
It's
the
not
carpet.
necessarily cost effective though, because it gets filthy and then you have to change it.
Well, the carpet?
Yeah.
Don't you wash it? Get a carpet cleaner.
That's me, on my hands and knees with a bucket and some soapy water. We're digressing again, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
There's key decisions you need to make to finish it off
Yeah.
within your budget and to be able to move in. Obviously, it's a false economy, putting something down that you're going to rip up 3 months later and do it again.
Yeah.
What's the point in that? And this applies to every single part of the build when you're pushing to get something finished without enough money.
Marco and Kath are desperately trying to drag these two bonds into the 21st century. But there comes a point where hard work and passion for the building just isn't enough.
On every restoration project, there comes a point where it's a bit of a crisis. And this is it. Because Marco is not wind and watertight, the glass isn't installed, and he hasn't got the rest of the money in from the bank. It doesn't get much harder than this.
It's been 3 months since I last visited our two barns in Herefordshire. Back then, first-time restorers Marco and Kath had reached crisis point. Neither barns were wind and watertight, their funding had run dry, and Marco was left working on the build with no previous experience. It's now the beginning of a new year, and the good news is the bank have finally released the second payment from their overall £300,000 self-build mortgage. This has been a massive relief for Marco and Kath. I've come back to find out what they've managed to complete on this ambitious project.
Morning! How are you?
Welcome.
So good to see you.
Thank
You alright?
you.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Is it done?
It is,
Is it?
done.
Just about, yes.
Is it? Can I come and have a look?
Absolutely,
Oh,
yeah.
lead the way.
Please come in.
At last, the roofs of both barns are finished, and all the glazing has been installed. There's still a bit of work to do with the landscaping, but inside, Kath has been able to realise her dream interior fixtures and finishes.
It's great. It's brilliant.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It looks fantastic. With a beautiful light coming right down in the middle of the building. Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah,
amazing.
really
And the
pleased.
timber frame is just stunning. I mean, now that you've got it all painted white,
It stands out.
it really brings it out, doesn't it?
What was once an empty shell is now a bright and spacious hallway. But I can see that they've had to make compromises with a temporary staircase. They didn't have much choice with money being so tight.
I've been waiting a long time for this, as have you. But it's been worth waiting for. That is amazing.
For Marco and Kath, the ground floor living space was always going to be the most important part of the design. Before the new oak frame construction was erected, the old timber barn was in a terrible state of disrepair and was about to fall down. Now they've created a spacious living area that combines the kitchen, dining and living room, a fantastic space for the family to entertain.
What you've done brilliantly is you've designed it as a series of very clear zones. The living zone slightly sunken down, the dining, eating area, another zone right in the heart of the plan, and then the kitchen zone cooking right at the very back.
Yeah.
Very distinct, really simple, really clever.
Yeah.
The kitchen looks beautiful.
Going to that barn in Oxfordshire, that really, really helped. That confirmed how we'd want our kitchen layout to be. We, even to the tiny detail of the lights, I mean, we nicked that idea from
we
the...
did.
Love the worktop.
Yeah, concrete.
Raw, rough, tough concrete, with then really smart, smooth doors beneath. I just love the way you've played everything back and kept it neutral, because for me, that then celebrates the timber frame. It is a beautiful timber frame building.
Upstairs is a triumph. All the hard work that went into making the roof of the brick barn structurally sound, while keeping as much of the original timber frame in place, has meant that they've reclaimed this building in a beautiful and dignified way.
It's a sign of a good building when you just go over and want to kind of touch bits of it all the time. You think, God, just how lovely that is and how tactile that is. And the history behind all of this is magical.
Yeah.
They finished both the girls' bedrooms, and the study sits elegantly on the upstairs landing. There's a family bathroom, and finally their master bedroom, complete with double-height windows making up the giant gable end of the oak barn.
Oh, that's probably the lightest, brightest bedroom I've ever been in.
It's really bright.
It's flooded with light. Doesn't get any better than this.
No.
Honestly, it doesn't.
Marco and Kath have pulled out all the stops to get to this stage of the project, but it's come at both a financial and emotional cost.
We've had a lot of help and a lot of support.
Yeah, a hell of a lot.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without a lot of people.
No way.
I mean, the restoration is stunningly beautiful, but it must have come at a high price. So how much have you spent, roughly? Do you know where?
Roughly, we spent probably about $320 on restoring the place. Obviously, we borrowed so much and we've had to use a lot of savings, that we had all our savings, basically.
To have done this to this standard after what you've been through with the financial pressure, worried about cash flow, a few issues with the builders, to have done this for 320 grand is pretty amazing. It's a big, big building. Here they are. Hi. You see your bedroom.
Finally, the kids get a chance to see their new bedrooms. Marco and Kath have literally just moved in, and the whole project has taken them nearly 2 years.
We won't do it again.
Ever.
There's just no way we could ever do it again.
We have literally gone to the brink and back.
Yeah.
On so many levels that
We couldn't take it again.
Personally, for me, I wanted to do this for my family, you know, for my kids and my wife. I wanted a really nice house that we could grow old in.
Marco and Kath are an inspiration for anyone thinking of taking on their first ever restoration project. With such limited experience and a difficult budget, what they've achieved is nothing short of extraordinary.
Hey. Here's to an amazing restoration project. Well done.
Cheers.
Lovingly restored by Margot and Kath, 2012 to 2014. Remember that?
Right,
Yes,
you look at that.
gosh.
That's
It's even
unbelievable.
worse than I remembered it.
I've got one more thing. Just a little thing.
Okay.
Tiny thing.
This beautiful home wouldn't be complete without its name, and Bayer is Old English for cattle barn.
Keep your eyes closed, keep your eyes closed, keep your eyes closed, keep your eyes closed. Okay.
Wow, awesome.
I absolutely love
Yeah,
it.
it's awesome.
Hair would bowl.
You got your Herefordshire Bull on there, and the Bayer.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you.
Don't drop it.
Finally, the family can enjoy life in their dream home, which is incredible when you think back to the condition of the original barns.
Taking on an abandoned agricultural building is like walking into an architectural black hole, especially for the inexperienced restorer. Barns were built as utilitarian buildings and were never really intended to be lived in, and these were in danger of collapse. But Marco and Kath have saved them. They've been on the most difficult journey under the most extreme financial pressure, but they've done it. What a restoration project, what a brave couple, and what a beautiful home.
To collect information and inspiration from the show in your own online scrapbook, or if you have a project you'd like to be featured in the next series, go to channel4.com/George. Next time, a couple attempt to restore a 15,000 square foot military bunker.
Certainly the most ambitious thing I've ever taken on, I think.
What on earth have you bought? And I uncover its remarkable World War II history.
This coming Sunday night from 9, Channel 4, it's Danny Boyle's new venture into television drama. Big director, big cast, highly anticipated Babylon. Next tonight, 1 minute, you're riding a horse. The next, induced coma. 24 hours in A&E.